please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations to the panel of qualified nominees. To Mr. Parker and Dr. Schaefer, just an issue that I just kind of want to put on your radar screen, not really to ask about, but in your manpower responsibilities. Should you be confirmed, we're doing a lot of analysis now of the 20-year global war on terror, how the battle was fought, lessons learned, what we need to do differently going forward. One of the aspects of this 20-year war that I think makes it pretty unique, and there are other aspects as well, is how much of the burden was borne by contractors. 7,000 to 8,000 deaths of U.S. troops in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria, but there were more contractor deaths, 8,000 to 9,000. And there were many times during the active phases of war in Iraq and Afghanistan where the number of U.S. contractors in those countries outnumbered the number of U.S. troops. We've spent a lot of time on the committee during the time I've been here talking about, the segue from a draft to an all-voluntary military and what a transition that was. But I don't think we've spent much time talking about the transition from having troops fight wars to having contractors fight wars. And I'm a little bit worried that the 8,000 to 9,000 U.S. contractors who died are sort of like the invisible casualties of the war. We had a hearing recently where appropriately witnesses talked about the 7,100 troops who died during these wars but didn't reference the U.S. contractors who did or the 20 DOD civilians who did. So I hope as you're analyzing manpower requirements going forward and as you're involved in assessment of the manpower used during the 20-year global war on terror, that we put a critical eye on this issue of how much of the burden we now put on the shoulders of contractors. I'm pretty sure there's never been a war in the history of the United States where the contractor deaths exceeded the troop deaths. And we ought not just to kind of accept that without analysis going forward. Dr. Chaudhry, I want to ask you a couple of questions. One of the largest providers of military housing, Balfour Beatty, recently paid a $65 million fine, agreed to pay that after pleading guilty to fraud in connection with the military housing program. Them being held accountable, that's a good thing, but there are still countless homes on our bases around the country and all the service branches that are not up to snuff. And if Mr. Parker and Dr. Schaefer do all they can to recruit folks in, but military families or folks thinking about joining the military think that the quality of housing is substandard, as somebody who served in the military and lived on these bases, you know how difficult that will be in terms of us meeting our recruiting needs. So I would just like to hear you talk about the priority that you would place within your responsibilities in the Air Force, should you be confirmed, on just making sure that we are continuing to be up to speed on work orders and doing what we need to do, and your willingness to come back and ask this committee for more assistance if there are additional authorities you need to make sure that the quality of housing is what our Air Force members are entitled to.
Thank you, Senator. As a former military member, I think about military privatized housing a lot, especially having a special needs child and having their special needs addressed on issues like allergies or anything under the sun that requires support is really, really important to me because I've lived that experience. Our military members and their families deserve to have well-maintained, clean, and excellent housing. Not only that, a system in which their grievances can be addressed, as well as any challenges that they're meeting at the same time. If confirmed, you have my commitment that I will move out on this issue extremely quickly to ensure that we have the right oversight, management, contracts, across the board. I'm going to take a top-down look at every aspect of our military privatized housing because we just absolutely have to get this right. Our military members deserve that.
I'll just say I was very, very unhappy with the performance of some of the private military housing providers, but I was more unhappy with the absence of oversight and just, contract supervision by the Pentagon. Nobody signed up to be a Beatty Balfour tenant. They signed up to be a soldier, sailor, airman, or woman, or Marine. And the responsibility for their housing was fundamentally a DoD responsibility. And once the private contracts were entered into, there just was a long period of time where the DoD exercised very little oversight and supervision over these contracts. So we will take you at your word on that and look forward to more discussion should you be confirmed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Kaine. Senator Blackburn, please.